how would we respond to the use of chemical or biological weapons by Russia in Ukraine?
If chemical weapons were used in Ukraine, would that trigger a military response from NATO?
It would trigger a response in kind. Whether or not you're asking whether NATO would cross, we'd make that decision at the time.
In kind means if you use chemical weapons, we'll use chemical weapons. So clearly the president using the wrong language, it left people scratching their heads for a while until the White House was able to clarify.
Well, it sure did, because there's a prohibition against use of chemical weapons. There's international treaties that the United States is a signatory on.
Sullivan said, quote, "I will just say with respect to any use of weapons of mass destruction, nuclear, chemical, biological, Russia would pay a severe price." So again, I think the U.S. is not limiting the use potentially of, I don't think, chemical weapons. I think that was Biden speaking wrong, even talking about crossing some line into using chemical weapons. But then when you say pay a severe price, and you're talking about nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, nuclear is right up in there.
There's no prohibition against nuclear weapons when it comes, there's anti-nuclear proliferation treaties, but you can respond if there was a nuclear attack. You can respond in kind.
If you are Putin in the Kremlin and you're trying to follow where the U.S. is, it's a little difficult because you get hit with these very tough sanctions. But then you're told that these sanctions, they're not really to stop you from doing anything. Take a listen.
Deterrence didn't work. What makes you think Vladimir Putin will alter course based on the action you've taken today?
Let's get something straight. You remember, if you covered me from the very beginning, I did not say that, in fact, the sanctions would deter him. Sanctions never deter. You keep talking about that. Sanctions never deter. The maintenance of sanctions, the increasing the pain, and the demonstration why I asked for this NATO meeting today is to be sure that after a month we will sustain what we're doing, not just next month, the following month, but for the remainder of this entire year. That's what will stop him.
So now we're saying that sanctions don't work, but that if we keep sanctions on and we do these other show of force, maybe it will work.
The Vice President of the United States, the Secretary of State of the United States, the Deputy National Security Advisor of the United States, the spokesperson for the Pentagon, the spokesperson for the White House, all said that the purpose of the sanctions, at least one of the purposes of the sanctions, just to be clear for everybody, was a deterrence and is deterrence. And yet the president, again, comes out and says, no, it's not.
And then he goes on in this word salad, which is all I can say that it is, in which he says, we need to sustain what we're doing. Well, you're sanctioning. So you must be having some intention of deterring. What are you doing if you're not? The following month, he says the remainder of the year, that will stop him. What will stop him? Sanctions? No, sanctions don't deter, but we have to keep on sanctions.
He's been contradicted by his own team. He's been contradicted by the facts that Donald Trump deterred Putin with his sanctions, the Russian pipeline sanctions. I keep saying this over and over, and I feel like nobody is listening to this. But Donald Trump had sanctions on the Russian pipeline. We didn't see an invasion from Putin. Joe Biden dropped those sanctions. The Senate Democrats voted to drop those sanctions. And they said they were dropping the sanctions because they didn't want to somehow embolden Putin. They were flat wrong. Deterrence works. We know that.
He's trying to punish people that are murdering their neighbors instead of trying to stop people that are murdering their neighbors. There's a big difference there. Clearly, sanctions are punishment, but clearly they're also a deterrent to be able to say we'll continue to be able to ratchet this up. It is the ability for the oligarchs that are in Russia that are severely hurt by this and for the Russian people to be able to speak out to their government and to be able to say, stop this unjust war that's actually happening. We don't know why we're invading the country of Ukraine, and we're personally suffering because of his actions on this. This mixed messaging doesn't help people that there's actually having artillery blow up their cities.
If you were the enemy, if you were the opponent, you would say, who is running the show over there? It's certainly not the Democratic Party through the President of the United States. As Jordan said,
it also sends a terrible message to our allies.
Well, our allies don't know where we're going. It's like, we're leading the charge and we hope that NATO's behind us, but we don't. But when we're saying one thing to the enemy and we're saying something else to our own allies, we're all over the board.
Where is this messaging going?
The first time Joe Biden said that sanctions weren't to deter was only after Russia invaded. So he's used this line now twice. Once after Russia had already invaded Ukraine. So he was trying to say, well, yeah, that was never the impact. But his administration, time and time again, I mean, you go through the officials. These are people who should be well informed. They should know what the president is thinking.